Good morning, everyone from Toronto, Canada, and welcome to the 2022 Global Student Success Forum. My name is Raylon, and I'll be your host and moderator for our first panel on the recruitment and admissions process in elite global universities. I'm really excited to be moderating this panel as this topic is of great importance and relevance to our global audience of practitioners and Rosedale Global High School students. To our audience members tuning in live, this panel is pre-recorded. However, certain university representatives from this panel are able to answer your questions on the chat. We'll make sure you know who's there. Let me start by introducing our panelists for today. Why don't we start west and then work our way around the world, if that's okay? So joining us from sunny California is Dr. Jan Lacoste, Associate Director of Admissions at Caltech. Jan, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm going to move north a little bit of California to beautiful British Columbia. I'd like to welcome Mr. Chris Weber, Regional Admissions of northeastern part of USA at the University of British Columbia. Good morning and welcome on the panel, Chris.
Morning, Raylon.
I'm going to start sailing across the Atlantic Ocean to the oldest university in the English-speaking world. We are joined by Dr. Martin Galpin, Deputy Director of Studies at the Department of Chemistry from the University of Oxford. Dr. Martin, good afternoon to you and welcome.
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And back to warmer seas in Southeast Asia, we are delighted to have Dr. Goh Se-sung, Dean of Admissions at the National University of Singapore. Professor Goh, thank you for joining us this evening.
It's certainly my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So shall we get started, everyone? Excellent, excellent. Jan, I'd like to start with you, if that's okay. You've been working in admissions. Thank you. Yeah. You've been working in admissions at Caltech for more than 15 years, and your team oversees a highly competitive admission cycle with a very limited number of seats each year. In 2020, I believe Caltech began a 2-year moratorium on requiring and assessing standardized external tests such as the SAT or ACT, for example, as part of the admissions process. And I believe based on a recent internal review, Caltech's decided to extend that moratorium on standardized testing for up to the year of 2025, so about 5 years. Could you give our audience an understanding of where the focus has shifted, if at all, for Caltech in assessing the admissibility of highly qualified students with very similar academic profiles? We'd love it also if you could speak a bit more broadly on that shift in U.S. institutions as well.
Absolutely. Well, the SAT and the ACT measure specific skills. And we've found so far with the moratorium that we're gleaning information about academic preparation from both the transcript and the teacher evaluations. And we want more data. So we have extended the moratorium. Some universities use the SAT as a way to verify that a student's grades reflect their knowledge. Some universities use scores to compare students from different high schools. We don't do that. I have been in this process for a while. I have read applications with scores and without scores, and I found that it really doesn't make a difference for us anecdotally. And we're finding that that is true so far with our small cohorts for the last couple of years. We're looking for specific academic preparation, and we can see this in the rigor of the curriculum and the grades that students earn. We also don't use GPA because we don't recalculate GPAs. In order to be fair with GPAs, we'd have to recalculate, put everyone on the same scale. We're a small school with a small staff, so we don't do that. Instead, we're looking at the individual grades in the individual classes. We want to see that a student is challenging themselves with the strongest curriculum available to them and that they're doing well. I believe other colleges are doing the same, especially where SAT is optional. It can only enhance, because when it's optional, students are only going to send it if they have a score that is within the bandwidth that the school is looking for. And if they don't have that bandwidth, they're not going to send it. So we can tell with the academic preparation, with the classes that they've taken, how ready they are for our core curriculum. And we're looking at more than academics. The students who apply to Caltech are mostly going to have strong academics. So we have to look at more than that. But academics are the first step in determining preparedness for all of our courses of study. And our admissions officers look for academic preparation in the first step of the review process with our very first read. When a couple of admissions officers read the application, our faculty will look for it in their step of the review process when they're reading applications. And this is a thread that continues because we certainly want to make sure that we're setting students up for success. We want students to thrive at Caltech.
Thank you, Jan. That was quite insightful for our audience, and appreciate understanding a little bit more of the detailed steps, especially with life without standardized tests for admissions offices in the U.S. Dr. Martin, I'd like to bring you in here, actually. While Oxford doesn't require major standardized tests like the SAT or ACT either to apply, we have noticed that most of the undergraduate, not all, of the undergraduate courses at Oxford require applicants to take an internally created admissions or aptitude test as part of their application. Could you tell our audience how big of a role these tests play in the admissions process to Oxford, and if you believe these tests will continue to play a major role at Oxford for the foreseeable future?
So many of our courses do involve these tests now, and they do play quite a big role for those subjects, particularly in the shortlisting process. So we have a system where the students apply through UCAS, which is the UK university's admissions process, and so we see an application form from each student, but then the subjects where there is a test, we also get the test scores. And certainly, at the shortlisting stage, those test scores can be quite important to help us decide amongst all the very highly qualified students that we get applications from. Certainly, then we from those students who are shortlisted, we then interview them, and each student gets an individual interview with academics, and so then that also then forms quite a large part of the selection process for the shortlisted students. I think certainly the plan is that these admissions tests will carry on. I think we find them to be very, very useful.
Thank you. And I'm just curious to know, as follow-up, what other criteria would you say are of high importance in the admissions process at Oxford?
Yeah, I mean, we look for quite a range of things. I mean, I think primarily we're looking for a strong academic track record up to the point at which we see the students, and then, of course, we're looking for evidence that the students have more to come and that they will succeed on our degree courses. But we're also looking for lots of other things. You know, curiosity and enthusiasm in the course is so important because students are going to be studying it for a long time. We want them to be enjoying the course, and then we're looking for lots of other things like the ability to communicate with us. As I say, every student gets an interview with an academic, and we look for them to be able to respond to our questions, because the way we teach students at Oxford involves the tutorial system, where a lot of the teaching is done in small groups with discussions over the subject. So we're looking for communication skills. We're looking for ability to deal with a hard course and cope with a lot of work. We're looking for attention to detail. We're looking for ability to deal with things that the students have not seen before. So quite a lot of our interviews test, can we give students something that they've never really seen before, a question they've never been asked before, and what can they do? And we don't necessarily expect them to get the answer right, but we want to see how they think about it and can they develop their own arguments.
That's really interesting, and there's certainly a lot of factors and criteria for evaluation. And for our audience, this is really interesting as well, especially the students, because they will often apply to multiple institutions in multiple countries. And as we've heard so far, the process can be very different if depending on the institution that you're applying to. And I think, Professor Goh, it's a great time to bring you into this discussion, actually. NUS is one of the world's leading universities and a very popular destination, as we know, in Asia for international students from around the world. In fact, a few of our employees are NUS grads actually here. At the senior leadership level of admissions at NUS, you have a lot of institutional knowledge of the admissions process at an institutional level. Could you provide our audience with a broader understanding of how elite universities like NUS can create intake targets for an admission cycle each year, and some of the factors that affect a university decision in setting those intake targets for various programs?
Yeah, thank you. Sure. I will certainly be happy to talk about this. Now, in the first place, maybe let me just explain how the academic structure in NUS is like. Now, actually,
Absolutely.
NUS, interestingly, actually now operates on a hybrid educational system that builds upon the strengths of the UK system and the US system. And essentially, because of this hybrid structure, nowadays, students in our system will have three components. One component of common curriculum, one component of major requirements, and the third component of unrestricted electives. And like I said, we are working on a hybrid system of UK and US. So we give our students flexibility. They can decide what they want to do with the unrestricted electives. If you want to go deep, you can use all your unrestricted electives to fill up additional modules, additional courses to take on your major topics. So that will actually gives you a very deep experience. On the other hand, you may also use the unrestricted electives to go broad. You can go for an interdisciplinary learning opportunity, like doing a second major or a minor. So with that as a backdrop, how do we decide on how many students to take for each year? So you can see that there is actually a lot of moving pieces. The total target of a university of NUS is fixed in a certain year. So we will the administration will decide how many students to take each year. And after that, how do we split this into the respective courses? Now, NUS actually admits students directly into the course of study. If you are going to major in engineering, then we admit you directly into engineering. If you are going to major in, let's say, a boutique program like pharmaceutical science, we'll admit you directly into pharmaceutical science. And how many students should we have for each of these courses? That is where we look at the demand, we look at the quality of the applicants and the requirements of the respective courses. At the end of the day, the whole idea here is that we want to bring in students who will succeed under our academic structure so that we take in the best and the most suitable students. So sometimes the number of places for a course may change from year to year. And sometimes some of the very popular courses, like for example, now computing is extremely popular. So we acknowledge this and we want to give more opportunity to students. So nowadays, the number of places that we have for computing has increased from, let's say, 5 years ago. So this is how we actually, decide on setting the intake targets for various programs.
Thank you so much, Professor Go. And it's interesting because, for our audience, especially if students or counselors are thinking so much about themselves and their ability to compete or have a chance at what they have to do, but it's really good for them to understand on the background what happens at the institution that creates that situation and how the institution reacts to those demands. So I appreciate that insights, and I hope our audience does as well. Really insightful. Thank you. And Chris, over to you now. I'm excited to have you provide a bit of a Canadian perspective for our international audience. UBC is one of Canada's top universities and one of the world's top 50 elite universities, actually. So while admission is competitive and selective, UBC is one of those few elite universities that do offer conditional admission through language and academic pathway programs for international students. I'd love it if you could tell our audience why these types of pathways are important for a highly competitive institution like UBC to offer to international students, and what percentage of your international applicants do actually go through these pathways?
So, if we talk about UBC's pathway programs, I think the main thing I'd like to highlight is that this isn't a program where you would come in and do just a foundation year and then go into university, but rather it's a program where students can transition straight from this pathway into their second year or into their second semester. They're taking academic courses at the same time. And so who this is targeted for is students who have all the academic requirements. They meet all of our admission requirements to enter UBC, except for that academic English. So maybe their English proficiency is a little below our required test scores. So for these students, there's the Vantage 1 program on our Vancouver campus. There's the English Foundation program on our Okanagan campus. These are ways for students who can come in and work on their academic English alongside their first year courses. And academic English is a discipline of its own. You could study it just as you could study French or study economics, because academic English that's going to be the key that's going to unlock success in every other class, if you think about it. So to your questions, actually, why is it important, right? So for students, I think it's important that, not every student has the luxury of attending a school where English is the language of instruction, even if it's not the official language of their country. Some students are just not in a country that has English as their official language, and their national curriculum isn't in English, but they're excellent students, and they shouldn't be shut out of opportunities at elite institutions. They shouldn't be shut out of the top quality education. And so for them, we're providing this opportunity to really, they have so much potential, so they can fulfill that potential and go to get this excellent quality education while developing their academic English. And for us, why it's important? Well, UBC is considered the most international university in North America. We have over 19,000 international students from over 160 countries. And so this helps with that, right? We like this diversity. We like to have students who are coming with different backgrounds and different perspectives, so that students aren't just learning while they're in class. They're learning from conversations with other people. I think educational diversity is super important. And then I think the second part of your question there was what percentage of students are attending programs. Yeah. So if you consider that our Vantage 1 program last year had about 350 students enrolled from 30 different countries. And our English Foundation program has 120 students available. So we have a large incoming freshman class across both campuses. We have about 9,000 to 10,000 in Vancouver, about 2,000 in the Okanagan. So if you do the math, I think that comes out to about 3% or 4% of our students. So it's not a huge percentage of first-year students who are enrolled in this, but that's kind of by design. Because if we want to provide these students with everything that they want and that they need, they have dedicated instructors who are only teaching their subjects with that focus on academic English development. If they have dedicated academic advising, they have housing communities that they're parts of, dedicated awards and scholarships. So in order to provide all of these supports, it needs to be a small program. Otherwise, you start to lose that added touch, which is what we're providing. So yeah, there we go. I think we've covered why it's important and kind of what percentage of students are in it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That's insightful, and that's also very important to me, based on my own background, mainly because English is, it's always seen as a barrier sometimes. And if you're academically performing, then it should be there. And it sounds like your program really does a good job of integrating that 3% of students so that they can successfully join in with a larger cohort at second year. They're already joined in, at first year. So that's exciting, and I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for your feedback on that. So I'm going to move on to a few more broader questions, and some of you did touch on these questions a little bit earlier in your first question, but we would love, of course, if you could expand a bit. So I will ask a couple of you to respond on some of these and maybe and converse a bit if possible. It's common for students to pursue extracurricular activities, as we know, both academic and non-academic. And as we've seen earlier in some of the earlier questions, that seems to be another piece, a big piece of the puzzle outside of the grades and assessments. So many universities do provide an opportunity to showcase those experiences on an application, and often tell applicants that they're looking for, the term we often hear is well-rounded students. So how much value is placed on this aspect, if that's the case, of the applicant profile at your institution? I know you can't speak for others. So your institutions in particular, and is it scored in the admissions process? I'd like to bring in Jan on this and Dr. Martin if possible.
Sure. The application is our opportunity to learn more about the student. And we're not looking for specific activities, but we want to see what inspires students to explore. We don't have slots that we're filling or checklists or anything like that. And we're going to get students who are all-rounders, who are athletes, leaders, musicians, etc. And then we'll have some very pointy students as well who do one main activity, but they do it all the time. Most students are somewhere in between, and we need all of them to form a well-rounded class. We wouldn't want a class of all leaders. They're not going to get much done. We wouldn't want a class of all followers. Same thing. Activities tell us what's important to the student. We know that students don't have a lot of time outside of school, so what they prioritize tells us about their interests. And please know that universities do not admit students based on one singular achievement. You're more than the sum of your accomplishments as a student. When universities look at what students do outside of class, they're just getting to know them. And the bottom line really is no one thing will get a student into university, but everything about them may.
All right, thank you, Jan. Martin, do you want to jump in on that, please?
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree. I agree with a lot of what Jan just said. I mean, so each of our courses has a list of selection criteria, and it's that on which we make the decisions, and the academics look at each application and as a whole and decide how that applicant fits in with our selection criteria. We're not looking for well-rounded students per se, but I mean, certainly, yeah, as I mentioned, we're looking for enthusiasm, we're looking for curiosity, and if students are able to show us through extracurricular activities that they're interested outside just the confines of the syllabus that they've been studying, then that can be very helpful. I mean, we realize that not all students have the opportunity to do certain extracurricular activities related to their subject. They might not be in the right place, they might not have these options available. So so we would take that into account as well when we look at them, and we don't attach a formal score to this in any way. It's just all part of the process when we're deciding who to take.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And Chris, Professor Go, feel free if you'd like to elaborate a bit more on your institution's perspective on this question. How about you, Chris?
I could add one thing, just that in Canada, generally, extracurriculars, that kind of thing is not looked at all. People are really only looking at grades. But at UBC, we're a bit of an anomaly where we ask all of our applicants to write a little bit about themselves. So don't be surprised if you're applying to multiple Canadian institutions and UBC is asking you to do this when no one else did. Yeah, I agree with what everyone else said. You know, students have their own individual journeys, and some students don't have extracurriculars, but instead they have work that they use to supplement their family's income, or they look after their siblings because their parents have to work in the evening. So absolutely, it's everyone's individual journey, and we're looking at everyone as who they are, not checking a box of, yes, you do music, well done, you're in. You know, there's none of that.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a quick interjection, if I may.
Sure.
That taking care of your siblings, working at the family business, those are extracurriculars. Those are things that you do outside of school, and they tell us a lot about you, and that family is important to you.
I fully agree with Chris about this is not about checking boxes. And sometimes some students may thought that, if I'm interested in certain things, I have to do an internship, I have to be a chairman of certain clubs and certain society. It all depends on what the environment is and what is the context of where the student is in. Some countries, some schools, they don't have so much opportunity. But we do acknowledge that certain extracurricular activities, like in terms of the scholarships that were offered the students, we do look out for leadership quality. And the extracurricular activities is actually a means rather than an end to demonstrate leadership quality. So it does not really mean that you need to check boxes, but we actually look at what kind of aptitude, what kind of strength that the student has, and it could be academic related, it could be non-academic related, that we are sure that this can help that this can actually enable the student to succeed in the course that one is looking at. So that is my take about extracurricular activities.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I hope it's clear to the audience that you don't have to be the president of every single club in your school, and don't be angry at UBC that's the one Canadian school asking you to put in a few extra comments on yourself. And moving on a little bit more to to guidance counselors. There's a lot of guidance counselors in our audience today, and they do play a large role in supporting their students in applying to universities and at least helping them find programs that meet their students' needs. And we do also have a lot of counselor workshops happening today. That being said, so what kind of tools and resources would you say your institution or your admissions office or recruitment office provides guidance counselors to assist, to help them assist with supporting students? And I think for us, mainly we encourage our counselors to help increase the number of quality applicants to institutions as opposed to just applicants in general. So we'd love it if you could tell our audience a little bit more of some of the things your institution might do for supporting that. So I'd like to go back to Chris, if that's okay, to start us off with that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have, online events. We've done some in-person events. We have a newsletter, and we've done counselor tours where we bring people onto our campuses. But I think the biggest, I'm not going to call myself a tool, I'm going to call myself a resource, I guess. I think the biggest resource we have is that we have a very large team at UBC. We have many, many recruiters who go around the world. And I think what the biggest thing you might notice sometimes is that this is a job where you can see in some cases a very high turnover. People stay for a year or two and then they move on. They just get a little burnt out because it's very intense. And so at UBC, we avoid that. We have a very large team so that no one gets burnt out, so that no one's overexerted. Because then we see this more as a career rather than a job you do for a couple of years after university and move on. And so the biggest resources we can offer is that we have a large team, which means you'll see the same person coming back to your school year after year. You'll have people who really understand your school. And so that when you email and ask us questions, we do get back to you, and we get back to you with the knowledge of what your school is. And we get back to you with that personalized touch instead of just, oh, here's the website. If you can't find your answer there, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. So the biggest resource, I think, is providing that in-person touch that we can from our massive team.
People, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Professor Go, would you like to elaborate a bit more on supports provided to guidance counselors?
Yes. Chris, I really envy you about your large team. That is really wonderful. And geographically, as you know, Singapore is at one corner of the world. It's quite a distance from many places. So of course, within the local schools in Singapore, our admissions officers will visit the school, will give talks to the school, will interact with the counselor. That one is not the problem. I think the biggest challenge is that how does a university like NUS reach out to the rest of the world, where it could be many miles away, thousands of miles away for many of the schools. And so what we do is that we actually leverage a lot on the internet. We make sure that we have very extensive website on our admissions related materials and all our courses, because after all, students apply directly to the courses. The curriculum of the courses, we make an effort to make sure that everything is stated nicely by the faculties offering the courses on their respective website. At the same time, NUS Admissions, which is my office, has a strong presence on the social media as well. We had regular posting on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we do organize many online webinars, and where it could be run by the admission office. It could be a half-day event that we not only the admission office runs the events, we also have the respective faculties offering the courses to give a webinar talk on their respective courses, and usually this will be done on Zoom, and we allow participants to type their questions under FAQ. We have a team of very hardworking staff replying the answers, replying to all these questions. And for students who miss these sessions, not to worry, we recorded all our sessions. We put it on our social media. So that's how we actually leverage on the internet, the online platform. Something that we learned also from the COVID-19 pandemic, to do it in a bigger scale. And that's how we reach out to the rest of the world.
Thank you, Professor Go. And it's I think COVID-19 has there's always a positive to a negative, where I think counselors and students are more in tune to be more receptive or more active online. for these kinds of topics than we've seen before. And we've certainly experienced that with our team, hence our event is virtual, actually. Dr. Martin, would you like to add anything to this question regarding support for counselors or teachers?
Yeah, I mean, we do sort of very similar things. We have actually a mailing list for guidance counsellors, so I'd encourage people to sign up to that and keep up to date with what we're doing. We have various webinars and workshops and online workshops and things, and we also have a very large website which really goes into all the details about all the courses and what we're looking for, various resources for schools and that sort of thing too. So yeah, really the online web presence is our big tool in this case. Yeah,
to go to. So I'm encouraging our audience of counselors to spend more time online on these websites, and you'll decipher a lot of questions for students very quickly. They're almost becoming little encyclopedias, I think, in terms of information and resources. And
reach out to us too. I mean, our team is kind of the opposite of UBC. We have a very small team, and we're very happy to answer any questions from counselors, pick up the phone and talk to you. Additionally, we're just getting started with our counselor emails, so please definitely sign up for those.
Thank you. I'm signing up as at the end of this meeting, that's for sure. And so, well, that being said, and this is interesting because as we know, all of your institutions are highly competitive and high entry. You're certainly not starving for applications, but you do make an effort as an institution to still be supportive and receptive of inquiries and counselors and as well as students. So we appreciate that. But moving into our next question, competitive entry programs and universities do experience an annual increase in applications. So it results in an increase in sometimes the GPAs or standardized test cutoffs in some cases. And sometimes, the combined lack of increase in seats in some cases, or institutions maybe moving away from standardized based tests, it can create a highly competitive admission cycle in some cases. That's why we're having this panel, to demystify some of those things. But for some of our students, it's still a highly competitive environment. So I'm very curious to know, particularly from Jan and Professor Goh, if you don't mind, what are some of the innovative ways admissions offices are assessing and selecting applicants to meet your annual targets from not just a students in places situation, but just in terms of quality too. So please, Jan, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we receive a lot of applications each year, and COVID-19 really exacerbated that. When we put the moratorium on the SAT, we just ballooned with applications, and I'm not so sure that it's just because of that moratorium. And the quality of applications is still quite high. Last year, we had almost 17,000 applications for 235 spots in the first year class. Wow. And we're not looking to increase the applicant pool, not by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, we're hoping to hone it. We want students to apply who are ready for the rigors of our programs and have a deep set interest in STEM. And to this end, we've instituted restrictive early action this year. We still plan to admit the majority of our students in regular decision, but we've started REA, and it's a non-binding early admissions process for students who are confident that Caltech is their first choice, and they're excited about the possibility of attending Caltech, and they want to learn early if they've been admitted to the Institute. And students admitted in REA will not be required to accept the offer. I mean, they still can compare financial aid options if they choose to apply to other institutions during the regular decision process. Another way we're honing the pool is we're traveling again. And in fact, next year, we hope to be traveling internationally, which is something we have never done. So that's exciting to look forward to. And travel helps us to talk to students and talk to counselors about figuring out who is going to be the best fit for Caltech. We also have professors who read applications. So that's not keeping the number of applications down, but it's how we hone our process to make sure that all students are getting a fair shake. We have several admissions officers reading every application, and those that move forward in our process will be read by professors and then by our entire admissions committee.
Thank you. That's great. And I don't think our audience understood much about the REA process that you've instituted. So appreciate your elaboration on that. Thank you. Professor Go, would you like to respond to that question?
Yes. Okay, for NUS, as mentioned earlier, the applicants will apply directly to the intended course of studies. We give students a number of choices, they indicate accordingly. And we actually assess our applicants holistically across the various courses and across a wide range of the qualifications, because some students may be presenting the Singapore Cambridge GCE A-level, UK A-level, American high school, so that there's a wide range of these qualifications. And we do not admit students based solely on standardized test cutoff. So what happens here is that how do we decide who got admitted and who will not get admitted? So basically what we actually have two types of courses. One type is actually that what we call that there's a more like regular kind of courses that is not 100% aptitude-based admission. Now, if the student, based on his or her qualifications, have very good results in their respective qualifications, we may offer them directly. But however, there may be others that may not have these extremely outstanding, very good results, but we still want to consider them. So what do we do is that we consider them under the avenue of aptitude-based admission. We look at whether they have relevant aptitude in the intended course of study or exceptional achievements that may be considered. And under considerations for aptitude-based admissions, we will send their applications to the faculties and let the professors assess them. So it could be based on their track record within that can demonstrate aptitude in the intended course of study, or the professors may have an interview with them and to find out more about their strength. Now, that is one type. The other types are courses and programs that what we call 100% aptitude-based admission. That means even you have stellar A-level results, we may not offer to you. We want to make sure that you are really suitable. Courses like medicine, courses like dentistry, architecture, where we look at the portfolio, these are what we call 100% aptitude-based admission. And that we have a program called the NUS College, and that is the first honors college of our university that started this year. Now, that first honors college is a prime example of 100% aptitude-based admission. What happens here is that this NUS College, what it does is that it offers an immersive interdisciplinary curriculum that supplements the student's major. So this can be paired with more than 50 of the majors that our university offers. And what we do is that the NUS College applicants, they need to complete an additional portion on the application form. A series of short answer questions, an essay, and then after that, there will be a team in NUS College reading this, assessing them, and shortlisted applicants will be invited for an interview through the online platform. And again, interviewers could be professors, could be senior alumni who actually determine whether these students have the aptitude that is suitable for the studies or the enhanced curriculum offered by NUS College. So that is a concrete example about some of these things that we are doing to actually assess students holistically and over a wide range of qualifications and also a wide range of courses.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I certainly didn't have an idea of the different avenues to admission at NUS. Actually, that's really insightful. Much appreciated. And I think we're coming closer towards the end of our panel, so I'd have to go with a closing question for all of you, if that's okay. I know we've been talking a lot about the getting in piece, the admissions piece, the selection process, but we do have some youngsters in the audience, actually, quite a few students at the grade 9 and 10 level, along with their eager parents, I have to say. And it would be really good if you could provide a little bit of advice from your perspective to parents and of younger international students or students in general at the grades 9 and 10 level, of how they can navigate and best prepare their child for this, what is unfortunately a competitive admissions process, but should be a fun process in our opinion. So we'd like to start off with, it's open. So who'd like to start?
I mean, I can go, so we don't all just stare into silence for a second.
Go for it. Yes.
If you're in grade 9 and 10, or your child is in grade 9 and 10, my main advice is just don't stress about it. I mean, students who do well are students who are happy and who have an idea of what they'd like to do. So take this time to explore, do different activities, live life, be a teenager, don't think you have to go all in on the music program and whatever. I mean, the one thing you can control is your grades. Definitely study well and keep up good grades, because that's always going to be important. And your grades in grade 9 help you to do well in grade 10 and etc. So, do that. But don't stress out too much. Just live life and be a teenager and figure out who you are, figure out what you want to do. And then that will help you be happy and succeed.
Thank you, Chris. Dr. Martin, do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. Also, let them study, explore the subjects they want to explore. Don't, as I said earlier, we want students to come onto our courses that are enjoying the courses because that's what they want to do, rather than because that's what they think they should do. So let them explore what they want to, and talk to them as well. Talk to them about the subject. We're really interested in students who can talk to us confidently, and I think from an early age it's important to talk to your kids and get them used to speaking about the subject.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Professor Go?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both points, all the points raised by Chris and Martin. Now, to me, actually, what to advise these younger students. Now, personally, 2 key values: passion and aptitude, and these are interrelated. Now, there's no point, like what Martin said, don't force it. Students, kids, let them discover what they like. If they're passionate about something, they want to find out more. They pick up the correct learning the learning attitude. You will acquire aptitude from this, and then you realize that you're good at it. When you're good at it, you will pursue more, and that is where these 2 will actually take you a long way, not just in the course of study at the university, and eventually for your future career. So that is my advice to the parents. Let your kids discover their passion and their aptitude, and let it grow for them.
Thank you, Professor Go. Jan, how about you close us off with this question as well?
We're all on the same page and we're all saying the same thing. In grades 9 and 10, students should be able to explore. Parents, let them explore, and let them find out what they really enjoy. There's plenty of time to stress out, and hopefully you won't. Hopefully this will be a fun process. But in 9th and 10th grade, see what you're interested in outside of Genshin Impact. I mean, you really want to do things other than video games. But go outside, see if you like sports, see if you like music, see if you like STEM, whatever it is that interests you, follow it, because this chance won't come again.
Thank you, Jen. And I think it's safe to say, I'll say on behalf of everyone on this panel, that the admissions offices will not be looking at your transcripts at grade 9 in great detail. So do explore, and don't spend your time focusing on that. Obviously do well, don't fail, but don't hyper focus on that either. So thank you, everyone. This brings us to the end of our panel discussion today on the recruitment and admissions process to elite universities. I'd like to thank our panelists, Jan, Chris, Professor Go, Dr. Martin, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank our team at Rosedale for putting this panel together. And lastly, I'd like to recognize the amazing educators, staff, and counselors from our network of more than 95 partner schools in over 17 countries that work tirelessly to support our hardworking Rosedale Global High School students in their successful transition from high school to university. Hope you enjoy the rest of the forum, and wish you all a great day. Thank you.